Hello YouTubers, Manny here from Manny's How To Workshop, and today I'm going to do a video on how to replace the crankshaft position sensor, which is right here. And I was able to get mine from Rock Auto, and this one came from Ultra Power. I priced it through like AutoZone and a couple other places, and it was like close to 90 bucks. On Rock Auto I found it for like 36, so that's a bargain. And the reason I'm changing that today is because I started having driving issues, and come to find out the crankshaft sensor wires was touching one of the pulleys. I believe it was the power steering pulley, and it was shorting out between two of the wires. So not only was the car running erratic and stalling, and I was also getting a code. And when I checked the code was for a camshaft position sensor, but upon further research on YouTube, a lot of people replaced it. Ended up being the crankshaft, and in my case it was actually the crankshaft position sensor that was had a problem. Being the fact that, like I said, the wires were shorting out between each other. I went ahead and separated the wires, and I taped it off, and figuring that might do the trick. And it ran okay for a little while, but then I still had the same problem. It started, you'd be going down the road smoothly, and all of a sudden, at normal speed, the RPMs will go down and then come back up again. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to replace that crankshaft position sensor. So basically what you're going to need is a drill driver or impact driver, put the little socket on there, the CPK, feeler gauge set. This one happens to be in millimeters, a mini flat tip screwdriver for disconnecting the connector, a pair of dikes or wire cutters to cut off any zip ties that might be on there, a breaker bar, half-inch breaker bar with 21mm socket, and that will go on the crankshaft bolt, and I'll show you why in a second. 1/4-inch drive set, little ratchet there, a little extension, and a longer extension, and a 12mm, 10mm, and an 8mm sockets. And those are for taking the splash shield on the bottom of the car off, which I already did, for sake of making the video a little shorter. And a little cup to put all your hardware in from the bottom. So basically, you're going to want to go ahead and take off this air intake ductwork here, and so that you can get to the connector for the CPK, which is right there, right here. So I'm going to have to take that little mini screwdriver and just separate them. And then take the ductwork, set it aside, and that way you can get to it. And from the bottom there's a 10mm bolt on the sensor itself that you have to loosen. And the reason for taking the ductwork here is so that when you snake the connector back up through, you make sure that it goes behind the pulleys. When I did my my timing belt on this, and I put everything back, I guess just from bouncing around and vibrations, the wire, even though it was inside of like a loom, made its way towards the front, which touched the pulley. So the next thing I'm going to do is go on the bottom and show you where the sensor is at, and get the pre removal gap, and lining up the tooth on the plate that's behind the crankshaft. And you'll see why I need to line it up with the 21mm socket, and we'll do that next. Okay, so I'm underneath the car, and here you can see the sensor is right there, the CPK, and behind this crankshaft is a plate, and it only has 4 teeth on it. The ones that I've seen in the book have like many teeth, but you can't even see the teeth right now until I put my fingernail behind it, and there it is right there. So I need to move this tooth down to the face of the sensor, which is back here, and then measure the gap before loosening the bolt that holds the sensor in. So that gives me my reference point, so when I go to put back the new one, I know how much of a gap to use. So I'm going to go ahead and reposition this so that I get better light back there and go on to the next step. Okay, so I went ahead and made my mark with a permanent marker here of where the tooth is. So when I move the crankshaft in the direction of rotation to get my tooth back to where the sensor is, I'll make sure to put it back the same way so that when you start the vehicle up, it won't be out of time. And right here you can see the little 10 mil bolt that is holding down the sensor. So that's where I'll be loosening after I get my my gap measurement, and that's what I'm going to do next. So I went ahead and lined up the tooth with the sensor face. You can see on the top left here where I made my mark with the permanent marker, the little black spot, and there's the feeler gauge between the tooth and the sensor, and I came up with 0.8 millimeter is a snug fit. 0.7 is nice, so that's going to be my measurement. Now in the manual, the repair manual says to make sure it's between 20 thousandths and 59 thousandths of an inch. So if you do the conversion, I split the difference. I went with like 40 thousandths, which came up to about a mil, but it also said to take this reference measurement also, which I did. So instead of being 1 mil, it's going to be 0.8, and that's what I'm going to do for the end. I went ahead and loosened it and disconnected the little, I don't know if you can see it, it's like a little tab there, right there, from the bracket right there. And now I'm going to go up top and disconnect the intake ductwork. Okay, here I'm going to go ahead and start disconnecting the ductwork. Okay, you just got to loosen that bolt there and loosen this one here. And there's a little hose here that goes, a little vacuum hose right there, and just pull it out there, pull it out here, lift it out, and set it aside. And you can see where the connector is right here, and usually there's like a little tab there, and if you push down on it, and it should come out. Hold on a second. And like I was saying, if you push down on this little tab right there, usually just push it in and it comes right apart. Alright, and just put that off to the side right now, and then you just gotta either push the connector behind the belt if you can. Let's see, usually if you just move the belt to the side like so, let's see, because it's already coming up from the bottom. I'm trying to think how I can get it by there. Oh. If I move this little bracket here, or this little tang that's holding that hose, I can push the hose to the side like that, and then sneak the connector behind the belt and slide it down, and there we go. Oops, sorry about that. And here it is. And I'm going to go ahead and bring it over here, put it next to the other one, and There's the new one. Now I'm just going to verify that